Firstly, the law is anti-black. The exploitation of black bodies permeates the history of the country. However, those stories have had shade thrown over them, cast out light of public knowledge. This has caused a form of knowledge production that further perpetuates anti-black scripts. And the law is right. Those instances of black exploitation highlighted in the 1AC, as well as countless others, continue to inform the concurrent knowledge production of the academy of the country. This causes the hypermasculinization of the black body, in which we always view blacks as the oppressors, never the victims, and we always see them. And we unknowingly push them further down to benefit the elites. That's the status quo. And once again, everyone, this is the Aaron and Ian show here. If we were opaque, how could you recognize the significance of the way we flow and the swag that we show? You could not. Their use of opacity in this round is terrible. Opacity is a strategy of whiteness, and when used by blacks against other blacks, it's only further proof of the societal entrenchment of anti-blackness. It's a tactic that justifies turning against others that feel the same oppression. And opacity fails when the target of the performance doesn't recognize it, or those who aren't meant to recognize it do. Do you think nobody noticed you take lines from the 1AC and put it in your performance? Pretty seriously, these people have been debating for a quick minute. Schatz heard it. Oliver, you heard it. So you should reject them, and they broke their performance during the cross-sex. That's a reason that you shouldn't even be voting on this. They clearly engaged in our discussion. So if Rakeem comes up in the block, or if they come up in the block and go like, oh well, you get targeted by society, you do too, because you engage with us. And now is the key time. Increased visibility in our current historical movement is crucial to disrupt white anti-black systems. German 12. Increased visibility and representation of people of color signifies hope and renew possibilities of positive change. Americans have a better chance of transformative impetus through understanding mechanisms to reinforce possibilities of change. White supremacy continues to shape everyday perception to the extent that patterns of racial inequality are maintained, and new intellectual strategies have been developed to foster social awareness and the need to change history and inequality through injustice in our society. Retain strong hope that cracks can be opened up spaces to disrupt the white supremacist capitalist system, to create a new relations, applying different discursive frames, interpret one's values and behavior and experiences in different terms of value. Then racialized subject creates an effective strategy to maintain racial difference against which white people can define who they are, cut the card at R, and no link here. We're not a strategy. At best, we're just saying learn about history. That's a tactic. There are literally millions of people. If the government puts on a watch list, everybody who says, hey, we should probably learn about history. How many people are the government watching right now? And can you give me an example of anyone outside of the debate that cares? Debate is about as opaque as it gets. And the net gets it wrong. Opacity is a strategy of whiteness. Brunta 12. Whiteness is clear, but opaque social construction is the lens through which bodies are colored. Whiteness remains colorless through the opaque walls of whiteness. Violent operations of perceptual level segregation, forms of physical representation, and the other being on either dominant or subordinate side of the wall. Hence, this wall of whiteness will remain invisible and hard to break through. When naming whiteness displaces it, form of status loosens invisibility. To our task is to make it invisible. To speak of whiteness, to assign everyone in place of relations of racism. Dealing with racism is not an option for whites. Racism shapes their lives, and the right wing is waging war on pedagogical space. Jerome 12. Right wing fundamentalists, corporate ideologies waging war against the workers, students, women, minorities, against those public spheres that provide a vocabulary of connecting values and identity, social relations, and institutions. And not thinking itself neoliberalism employs modes of the governments that are totalizing in instances of all social life determined through the market and measure. And the strategy of opacity is irreversible at the very least. While opacity may well be a spy figure playing the master's house, strategizing for some indefinite future to come, while sailing under the flag of convenient makes marks to retreat. This undermines the few remaining spaces of knowledge production that are critical and critical exchange vital to check authoritarianism. Drone 13. America has become amnesic, in which forms forgetting are celebrated under a neoliberal regime. Language power is enforced from method. Critical analysis and public intellectuals are part of the disimagination machine. Solidifies power of the rich structure and the militarist industrial academic process by representing ideologies as the powerful and common sense, the historical legends of resistance to racism, militarism, how long have been forgotten and made a visible solidarity to turn apart, retreat into orbits of private, undermine those spaces, nurture non-commodified knowledge, authoritarianism, life, demonstrate how knowledge can be used to empower people, get them to think critically, engage in citizens. And the strategy of opacity pretty much means we can't have race debates if that's the argument they're going to go for. If we can only be engaged in the undercommons, as Rakeem's probably going to get to, then we can't talk about our identity in debate. That's probably an overall bad thing, because then that disenfranchises us. And spills over into violent policies and recruits. After 14. Commending institutions on divorce from ethics, the emergence of anti-politics makes it easy for those to lose faith in their culture and open substantive democracy politics have been emptied, meaning anti-politics, legitimating anti-democratic policies, raging for attacks on women's rights, voting rights, immigrants and minorities, public spaces are transformed into spaces of consumption, conditions for radical imagination transformed into spectacle, repression, state violence, massive surveillance, and your consolidation of power. It becomes more difficult for individuals to comprehend what they have in common, what it means to be held together and shared responsibilities rather than shared fears and competitive struggles. And you should renounce the micro-political stage of the college classroom. The debate space itself offers a unique location in which transforming pedagogical practices can only occur, but also spill over and change the hegemony of whiteness throughout society. We ask you to look at your own pedagogical practices as an adjudicator situated in this very unique location, marking the exclusive practices of whiteness revealed. Shamburo 09. Pedagogical space, the principal way white professors confer whiteness who work and relate in the classroom. The facility engage and interacts with students, utilize particular teaching, approaches or tactics the educational institution makes implicit distinction between those who privileged due to race and those who is not. We is granted access to those who is threatened. Tolerance often perpetuates invisibility of whiteness, focusing on people of color fitting with white ways and white people being understanding of others. Rarely whiteness itself is examined. Issue of power is largely avoided in these examinations, and individual relief of responsibility through omission. Questioning gains of white people often falls into individual space of learning are not exempt white people need to refocus attention on their own whiteness instead of fixing in people of color spaces. Higher educational place where transforming practices can be molded in society and challenged. It takes effort to disentangle the two. When the instructor's authority is impacted by other social identities, system of white dominance is reproduced is kept exclusive to structures and spaces as well as micro-level interactions in college classrooms. And let's see. Yeah, no argument that I already made. We can just get rid of the cards at the bottom.
So don't worry about that. No. 7 stuff.
But, oh, right, James, my bad. Let me read that. And the use of marriages and spaces creates a moment of radical disruption that creates a community of resistance against social injustice. James 07, the projective of elevating submissive voice of redefines political function, the voice of writing and speaking. The political powers of narratives creates a potential for a convergent radical desire that will cross boundaries in the search of home and democratic enclave communities of resistance. Maroon camp to the request to explain the role of voices here suggests a search for justification of stories of the displaced, the fleeing, the besieged, and the revolutionary slave as having significance that warrants our attention. And the simple elevation of dismissed voices offers possibility for creating a space that allows for the emergence of perspectives of all people, James 07. Erasing genealogy mapped by the wretched of the earth, allows non-return to print over their text and children narratives as recyclable. Their practices of policy, machinery, and technologies of warfare, progressive radical order continues to align household that I'm forced to occupy when the household is disappeared for our communities. Prisoner square, red, black, and brown peoples, women, and other children reappears and dictates so level to the own voices of the unmitigated desire. Surely this is war. And lastly, permutation. You can definitely embrace the affirmative and engage in their tactical capacity. We would say that we are the permutation in and of ourselves, that we do not give a transparent strategy as to how we want to accomplish our goal, but we unfortunately our criticism of the status quo and how it deploys oppression to black bodies. And once again, we believe that we can use this space as a way to transform that. That in itself is not a strategy. Two aren't mutually exclusive. All right. Ready for cross-ups?
Yeah.
So if we just come into this debate and you think we're reading opacity like from the get-go, which we haven't said yet, but like we haven't said at all.
The fact that you avoided our questions, I mean, we've read. Like,
okay.
We know what opacity
so
is.
like if we don't say anything for the rest of the speeches, like why should the judge vote for you? Like why are you good?
I mean, that's pretty much
the perms that you are a performance. Like you didn't. Okay, like and even all of your cards in the 2AC talk about why opacity is bad. So like if it is, why would you want to be an embodiment of that?
I mean, if you win that some chance that it might be good, we're just saying that that doesn't necessarily disengage from the AF completely.
All right, I want to ask two quick questions. How is opacity white?
Opacity is a strategy of whiteness because pretty much like we can count several instances throughout history in which this.
All right, give me an example. Give me one example.
An example. Let's see. When white people took slaves from Africa, they separated them based on slave ships so that they couldn't communicate.
How is that a form of opacity of whiteness?
A form of opaque whiteness is pretty much they're intentionally using vague strategies Can I finish already? Like,
No, you're good. I'm listening. I'm just
yeah,
writing down
when
thoughts.
black people intentionally use vague strategies to disenfranchise other black people. Well, not other black people, to disenfranchise black people. You're using it in this space to disenfranchise
Okay.
us.
What
That's
is
what we're getting at.
what is whiteness?
What is whiteness?
Yes.
Yeah, we pretty much say it's the ideal of what we consider normal right now. So like the white Jesus would be an example.
So
like Jesus
where does that
probably
come
had brown
from?
skin. Like, what?
Where does that come from? Or like,
Where does that come from?
yeah.
Probably chattel slavery when the white people took all the black people.
Can I ask
Okay,
one more question?
sure.
That's them.
Is the debate space safe?
Is it a safe space?
Yeah. Is it safe in every
Just
instance?
generally in every instance.
Yes, in every instance. Is this space safe?
No.
Okay, no doubt, no doubt. Thanks.
Okay, cool. So you read like you try to read like visibility key and all these kind of sound like solvency cards or like boosting our solvency. So how is that?
No, I mean,
how are you not a strategy and yet you want to say that
We're saying visibility key.
breaks down something?
May I speak?
I didn't finish my question, but now you
I
can.
feel like you did, but okay. Pretty much, the visibility key arguments are pretty much disads to opacity. Like, we're going to argue that opacity is a strategy in which, like, we
Why?
become invisible. We fade into, like, what? Why?
No, I was just gonna say, why are you like preempting so hard? Like, why is your app good? Is what I'm asking. Like, why should we vote for you independent of anything we say?
Because we win that if studying history is overall good in terms of like studying oppressions that we can move through white structures.
But
or
don't
at
you
least-
advocate historical analysis like just to break down in general?
I mean, we say it's a disruption of the pedagogy within this
So
space.
how's that not a strategy of
It's
breaking
not a
down?
strategy because you don't know how we do it.
You-
That depends on the round.
Did you read this historical analysis in your 1AC?
Did we read the historical? I mean, the 1AC obviously doesn't have all the answers, but we at least begin it. We would say.
Okay, so you begin at 1AC.